Well, in the context of a video that I uploaded called Suzuki on a Loving Heart back in 2018, a subscriber indicated thus. He said, it was a wonderful and inspiring passage. And he said the final line was interesting. And he asks, does the prajna and compassion difference equate to a difference in cause and effect? Is compassion the response to the ephemeral world, and is prajna the ability to know the world as ephemeral in the first place? Well, this gave me an opportunity to indicate sort of my core understanding of how we can appreciate the nature of the two primary attributes within Mahayana Buddhism, namely wisdom and compassion. And in that context, what I said to the individual in reply was, I said, see if this helps. And this is my basic understanding. See if it makes sense to you as you listen. Prajna is wisdom, or the insight into the emptiness of all phenomena. And here I define it. Emptiness in that they are empty of any independent self-existence. In other words, emptiness doesn't mean they don't exist. It's not nihilism. And so again, prajna is the insight into emptiness in that they are empty of any independent self-existence. But this insight, because it implies, to my mind, a fundamental interconnectedness, it leads to karuna, or great compassion. So again, just to reflect on that, if I am not a totally independent entity, a self separate and apart from everything else and everybody else in the world, if I am in fact interconnected, that's the implication, is there's what I call a mysterious interconnection. So the insight of prajna, because it implies, to my mind, a fundamental interconnectedness, it leads to, the word is karuna, or great compassion. So again, my understanding is the wisdom leads to compassion. It's inevitable, because if I am interconnected with all others, then it makes no sense. It would be selfish in a sense to pursue enlightenment only for my own personal benefit. Okay? Now, this compassion is, in the Suzuki excerpt, is characterized as a loving heart. Love is a word that has a lot of baggage, if you will, here in the West particularly. And so, we don't necessarily see compassion being equated with love frequently, I don't think, in the Buddhist literature. But this is Suzuki's way of understanding it, and that he sees compassion as characterized as a loving heart, and that's fine. But Suzuki goes on in the next line after the excerpt that was referenced to say, quote, the heart particularizes and feels pity for the suffering of the world. This is the common teaching of the Mahayana. If the world is like a vision, even when perceived in the love of the enlightened one, where is the framework in which to build up the temple of universal salvation? So let's just break that down a little bit. The heart particularizes and feels pity for the suffering of the world. So we have the generalized sense of compassion, or a bodhisattva does, which we're not capable of fulfilling, or I'm not, at least in this life. But the description of the bodhisattva who makes this vow to not attain enlightenment until all beings are enlightened, that generalized sense of compassion and pity toward the suffering of the world, it gets particularized, because each person that the bodhisattva encounters has their own idiosyncratic array of aches, pains, suffering, losses, grief, lamentation, etc. And so that's what the bodhisattva does, is particularizes the compassion in relation to specific individuals around specific. So in a way, it gets to the irony that we see again in the Mahayana scriptures, is that the truth is characterized by neither existence nor non-existence. Or again, what gets emphasized in this, Prajnaparamita in 8,000 lines that I've been reciting, where the Buddha admonishes and says, if the bodhisattva only gets hung up on the notion of emptiness, he ain't gonna make it. In other words, in addition to the insight of emptiness, the bodhisattva needs to have a commitment to relieve the suffering of all sentient beings and to use skillful means specifically to do so. But that's, in a way, another topic. So, repeating Suzuki's line, he says, the heart particularizes and feels pity for the suffering of the world. This is the common teaching of the Mahayana. If the world is like a vision, or ephemeral, or as empty, even when perceived in the love of the enlightened one, the love of the Buddha, in the case of Shin Buddhists, of Amida Buddha, where is the framework in which to build up the temple of universal salvation? Well, the way that temple is built up is by this particularization of the compassion, which is the inevitable result of prajna, or wisdom. I said, it is for this reason that the bodhisattva does not enter into nirvana. His or her vow is to refrain from doing so until all beings are saved. So I indicated to the person who raised this question, I said, to appreciate this deeply is indeed, as he had said, wonderful and inspiring.